everyone, welcome back. It's been forever since I posted a video, but I'm really excited to be finally sitting back down here in my little filming area, talking to my camera, because I missed you all. So I hope you all have been doing well. I have been focusing a lot on my health, and I plan on doing a separate video to update you all on that. I have several other videos I'm hoping to do. We'll see when they actually happen. But for today's video, I want to go over what I've been reading over these last couple months, as well as what I'm planning to read for September. The first book I want to talk about is Island of the Mad by Lori R. King, which is the latest book in her Mary Russell series, and many of you have already heard me talk about this series. It's one that I have just historically loved. I have a tattoo based on this series. It's great. I felt a little bit conflicted about this particular book though. I gave this book 4 stars on Goodreads, though I think technically it would have been a little closer to a 3.5 for me. There were many things about this book, especially topically, that I loved. But there were also a few things that just didn't quite hit the usual mark for me. The formatting of these books has shifted a little bit over the last several. It used to just be wholly from Mary Russell's perspective. In fact, sort of the founding idea of these books was that they were diaries or journals that were found in a trunk somewhere, and then Lori R. King edited them, much like Conan Doyle did. Haha. Anyway, so they were very much from Russell's perspective. The last book was completely different because it was not from Russell's perspective. It was about this thing that happened to Russell, but without us seeing it through her eyes, so it was almost an inverse of the normal format. This one has gone back to the old format, sort of, but it also jumped between Holmes and Russell a little bit. And I don't know, I miss the old format, I will say that. I like it when it's a single perspective, just that first person, we're really seeing inside of that one character. That's what I love. So I wish it would go fully back to that, but that's just me personally. And maybe because of that, I felt a little disconnected from Russell while reading this one. There were certain things that just didn't feel like the Mary Russell that I have in my head. And I'm wondering a bit if that's just the perspective change. So that was a thing for me. There were a couple moments where something happened that I had a hard time believing, like bump into someone and take a key off of a keychain. Maybe I'm not envisioning old-timey keychains right, but that just seemed like hard to do in that moment. So yeah, there were a few things like that that just took me out of the story a bit. But topically, let's go into that, because one, this is it's mostly set in Venice. That's where the bulk of the story is, but it's also set at a time where Mussolini has recently come into power and fascism is like slowly spreading out into Europe. Part of the story, it's not the main mystery, but it's definitely a hearty subplot, I would say, is Russell and Holmes like doing their part to take down fascism. So that's good. I'm here for that. Also, the bulk of the actual mystery involves many queer characters. The main person who's gone missing is a lesbian woman, and Mary is infiltrating the queer party scene of 1920s Venice to get information about that. It's great. I love that. Also, Cole Porter is there. Cole Porter. He wrote many songs that were very famous in the 20s, and I love Cole Porter music, so that was great. Also, the island itself, Island of the Mad. So there are technically several islands that have this sort of storyline where there were asylums on them. There was one that had an asylum for men, one that had one for women, and then there's another island that at this point was just deserted, but it used to have an asylum, also used to be like a hospital where plague victims were sent, and it's just like all of these terribly horrific, morbid, spooky things happened on this particular island. So basically anyone who would believe in hauntings and ghosts would believe that this place is haunted, and that is played into a bit with the story itself, and that's great. Side note, I actually had a conversation with Mary Russell because the character has her own Twitter account. And I said something about the book having ghosts in it, and she was very defensive about that and the point that it did not have ghosts in it. Mary, there were ghosts. I'm sorry, there were ghosts. I'm sorry, you can't have an island like that and not have ghosts. There were ghosts. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, topically it hit so many marks for me. Format-wise, the writing just wasn't quite there for me. That's why I took it down a little bit. But as always, I love going back to this world and revisiting these characters, and I'm really excited for the next book, whenever that might happen. And I've already spent way too much time talking about that book, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace here. The next book I want to mention is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, and I won't talk about this one much because I read this for S'more Sci-Fi in July. So if you would like to hear me talk more about this, one, you can go listen to S'more Sci-Fi. We have 2 episodes up where we discussed our feelings about this recent read. And I also have a review video from when I first read this book about 3.5 years ago. So I'll have links to all of that down below if you want to check that out. I've also read several graphic novels in the last couple months. So first I have the Sunnis Tone series, and I'm not even going to attempt saying the author's name. It's down there in the info. This is a series that I will say is for adults. I'd heard really good things about this series from several of my bookish friends, and these did not disappoint. The art in these books is gorgeous, just completely gorgeous, and I fell in love with the characters. There's this perfect mixture of charmingly awkward scenes with very adult erotic scenes, and it just made for such a wonderful story that I really connected with. So yeah, I really enjoyed those. I think I've actually read 4 of them. I only have 3 here, but I think the 4th is somewhere in the apartment. So yeah, I'm really excited to read the next one. I think 5 are out now, and the 6th will be coming out later this year. So yeah, good stuff. Then the other graphic novel that I read just recently was The Adventure Zone. Here be Gerblins. Here there be Gerblins. Sorry. So this is the graphic novel version of the beloved podcast The Adventure Zone, in which the McElroy brothers and McElroy father play Dungeons and Dragons. I love this podcast so much. I love this family. They're just so wonderful and good. And this was such a great graphic novel version of the story that I have come to love. There's also a intro in this by Patrick Rothfuss, which is wonderful. Cat. And the final book that I wanted to talk about from what I've read in the last few months is A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. And this is the 2nd book in the Wayfarer series, the first of which was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I loved that book so much, and I was only hesitant to jump into this one because I knew that it didn't follow the same characters. It follows a couple characters that we know from the first book, but they sort of split off, and there's their own little adventure and all of these other new characters. So yeah, sometimes I have a hard time shifting away from the first book's characters, but it was so worth it. It was such a good book. It was just so perfect and moving, and Biko has things to say. He also loved this book. Yeah, I'm not going to go on too much because I will go on forever about this, but it was just as wonderful as the first book, if not more. And if you've read that one, I highly suggest you move on to this one. If you haven't read any of this series, pick it up because Becky Chambers is quickly becoming one of my new favorite authors. Okay, then moving on to what I'm currently reading and what I'm planning to read for September. First on the list is Record of a Spaceborne Few, which is the 3rd book in the aforementioned Wayfarer series. I'm about halfway through this one right now. I will probably honestly have this one finished by the time that this video goes up, just because I'm obsessed with it, and this is going to be the rest of my day probably, just finishing this guy up. So good. Again, we've shifted. We're following different characters than the previous 2 books. Again, it's someone that we sort of know from the previous books, but not that much. I am already just so hooked into that character, these new characters, this world. It's so good. It's so good. I seriously hope that Becky Chambers writes 30,000 books in her life, because I will buy them all, I will read them all, and I think I will love them all, just based on what I've seen so far. So there you go. The next book on my list is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem, and this is the book we're reading in September for the S'more Sci-Fi Book Club, and I'm really excited about it because I have never read a book by Lem. I've read some of his short stories, and he wrote the short story that inspired The Sims. Yes, for that alone, we should all be super Lem fans, because look at what that has become. It's beautiful. I picked it, honestly, I didn't even know what it was about, and I saw the cover and I was like, yeah, a Lem book, let's pick that up. But it actually sounds pretty interesting. When psychologist Chris Kelvin arrives at the planet Solaris to study the ocean that covers its surface, he finds himself confronting a painful memory embodied in the physical likeness of a past lover. Kelvin learns that he is not alone in this, and that other crews examining the planet are plagued with their own repressed and newly real memories. Could it be, as Solaris scientists speculate, that the ocean may be a massive neural center creating these memories for a reason no one can identify? Long considered a classic, Solaris asks the question, can we understand the universe around us without first understanding what lies within? Sounds pretty cool. So I'm really excited to pick this one up. I've heard great things about it, and I'm excited to talk about it on S'more Sci-Fi. Once I'd read the synopsis for Solaris, it reminded me so much of this book that I read about 5 years ago, I think. It's a paranormal romance novel called Ghost Planet, and it just sounds really similar and possibly inspired by this book, but more romancy and paranormal. I don't know. So I'm planning to do a reread on Ghost Planet so I can kind of compare the two for the podcast, just because that sounds fun in general, and it was a good book if I remember. I think I gave it 4 stars. Then I have 2 more books that I'm hoping to get to over the course of the month. We will see if that actually happens. But the first one is one that I started quite a while back and then set down. Dragonhaven by Robin Hobb, which is the second book in her Rainwild Chronicles series. And I'm actually doing a buddy read on this series with Frankie from Frankie Reads. We both read the first book, loved it, and then got to the second book, and we're feeling just like not quite in the mood for that epic fantasy kind of vibe, so we set it aside, but now here we are. Pumpkin spice lattes are out, and we all need a bit of that autumnal epic fantasy. Yeah, so we're jumping back in with this one, and I'm really excited to get back into this world because I love me some Robin Hobb. It just can't be denied. She's too good. And finally, on my September TBR, I'm hoping to pick up There Before the Chaos by KB Wagers. This is an advanced reader copy that the lovely KB Wagers sent my girlfriend and I. This is the first book in a new trilogy, but it takes place just after the end of her previous trilogy, which was the Andronin War series, which I am obsessed with. And I'm so excited to get back into it. So this is still following our main character of Hale Bristol. Amazingly dramatic things happened in the last series, and I'm so excited to see what's going to happen now. This one is actually coming out October 9th, it says on the side here, so you all can look forward to that, and I'm so excited to get back into it because, yeah, I love these books. And I think that's all I have here. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up, but I would love to hear down in the comments what you all have been up to, what you've been reading. Have you read any of these books? What are you planning to read for September? Let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I hope you're all having a wonderful week so far, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!